Welcome back to Two Homers and a Realist. This is the post-spring game pod brought to you by Tobacco Exchange. 3 great locations throughout the metro area, Moore, Oklahoma City, and Edmond. They're going to continue to be a great sponsor for us. We're very thankful to have our relationship with them. I'm Steve.
Lucas.
Jay.
We were at the spring game. Where was Connor? Connor was doing fatherly things. He was doing all...
Home watching Arsenal.
He was, we all know what he was doing. He was watching his soccer. And so he claimed he was doing some stuff with his kids and being a good dad. I'm sure he was great. But we were at the spring game. We were watching it, enjoying it. The weather held off. It was nice. It was actually,
nice.
I mean, it was nice and cool.
Yeah, it was football weather.
It was football weather, yeah. It was good, yeah. Not a storm, where we've had storms in past years where we had to worry about hail and all kinds of stuff afterwards.
Is Paul Feinbaum coming on tonight, or is that later?
He'll be in 30 minutes. He'll be joining the pod. So we are part of the SEC now, as far as I know. I mean, basically, we're part of the SEC. What's funny is
July 1st.
Officially July 1st, but we're as good as part of the SEC as anything. I mean, when you look at football, you're always a look ahead. So I'm going to say we're part of the SEC when it comes to football.
We still had the Big 12 logo on the press box today.
Did we really?
Did y'all notice that?
Oh, I didn't think about
at the very
that.
top of the press box.
Oh,
the
you're
Big
right,
12
yeah.
logo is still there.
I got some repainting to do, some rebranding to do.
No, it's not painting. It's
Oh, yeah,
like
that's a giant...
sign thing.
Yeah, I got to pull that whole thing down. Well,
They went with Toby on the field.
I like that.
I did too.
That was really cool.
Because
That's
you don't want to
classy.
go Big 12.
No.
And you're not quite in the SEC.
Yeah.
So I like the fact of just paying tribute to Toby.
I like that too. That, a Sooner, a football lover, that's pretty cool. That's really cool. A little tribute to him. And I'm sure there's going to be a tribute during the season when he gets out there too. That's going to be really nice. I don't know. To me, I'm going to talk about the spring game and
Who
say...
won?
Well, I think the red won. Whatever, the offense
They just made up points as they went along, though.
Yeah, they took points away. They added points
halftime,
to it.
The announcer was like, it's 20, what do you say? It's 25-2 or something like that. And they look up
That
there,
wasn't halftime.
and it was like 20, or was it
Into the first
and
quarter.
it was like, or no, it was 28-2. Then it was 25-6 when they came back from the commercial break. I was
I
like,
honestly didn't care, but yeah, it started off. I was like, wow, I wonder how this scoring system. This is going to look. Really
I didn't
bad.
try to figure it out because in past years it's been so stupid, and
It's all
they literally
across
changed every year, so
board.
it doesn't make any difference. If you force a punt, you got some points. If you didn't force a punt, maybe you got some points. If you had a long gain, you got some points. It's stupid.
If you had the Chick-fil-A guy kick a field goal, you got 3 points.
If Joe John Finley outkicked the Zach
punt.
Elliott,
yeah,
punted
a
him,
punting
then
contest
you get
with
3 points.
Yeah, so it was not exactly something we call a real rigorous game. But I will say, all that aside, it was less of a promotional experience than it was for me a really good hard practice. And I don't think I've seen that in the last few years. Like in the 2 years ago, rewind to that record-setting attendance and amazing introduction for Brent Venables. That was a lot of rah, bringing the band back together. We love this team. We're a part of a family and all of that. And then over the next 2 years, fast forward to where we are today, it's more business as usual. It's a lot more, let's get down and see the X's and O's and have a continuation of what has been spring drills to get to a point where we're making decisions and who's going to be the starters, who's going to be the backups, who's going to be a scholarship athlete. We'll talk about that in a minute. And where are we coming into the next season? So I think it's a nice sort of plateau to a new high level that really wasn't existent in the past few years. And it's also not just a sort of recruiting platform, which is what it was in the past under Lincoln Riley. It, to me, seems like it's hit a new level. I don't know. What do you guys view, and what are your overall take?
Yeah, I think what's always interesting is the dichotomy of the whole spring scrimmage, right? You get a bunch of sacks. You're like, yeah, the defense has sacks. Like, okay, the offensive line is terrible. You get people wide open. You're like, oh, what a great throw, or it's the secondary at a position. So I think mostly if you're going to try and watch it today from a trained eye, you really have to target in on the nuances of the game to truly get anything out of it from today. And maybe some of that can't even take place all at once live. right? You're going to have to really go back and, if you
Dissect
recorded
it.
the game and dissect it and see who exactly was in, were they playing the entire first-team defense? Was it just a partial first-team defense? Was it starting offensive line all together out there, etc.? So to me, as a super fan, that'll be fun for me to go back and watch and be able to break down player by player the difference between really what's going on. But I think what you can tell, and Steve alluded to it, but we'll mention it here in a little bit. We have, which is a good problem to have, we have a scholarship limit, and we are over the limit. And it's really hard to find players that you can for sure be like, we're okay losing this guy, because we're in a position that we haven't been in for probably a decade, if not more.
Oh, yeah.
Where you're going to be losing guys to the portal, so everyone prepare themselves.
Don't freak out.
yeah.
Don't lose your heads.
There are going to be star players out of high school,
Guys you've
even
heard of.
contributors on the team, that are going to hit the portal because they're now third or they're now fourth, and these guys want to go play football, right? No one wants to be a third stringer their whole career. So that part's always interesting. But yeah, I think it was just a good, just a good day of football.
What did you think, Lucas?
I was expecting the defense to hold the offense more than they did, just based on not have as much time to throw the ball deep is what I assumed coming in. But when I started looking closer at who was in and out, Woody Washington didn't play, Billy Bowman didn't play, Gentry Williams didn't play. So that's possibly 3 defensive starters in the secondary right there.
Well, and the one offense mostly went against the 2 defense.
Yeah.
And vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
So Jackson Arnold had more time to throw. The backup quarterback, escaping Michael Hawkins. He didn't. He was just getting sacked as soon as he took a snap a lot of times.
Yeah.
And when he had a minute to throw, when he had a few seconds to throw or slipped out of the pocket, he had a cannon for an arm. I really like what I saw from him.
He looked very poised for his age.
Very poised. There was no turnovers at all today.
Nope,
from
not a
anybody.
one.
Not a fumble.
Nothing. I thought Jackson looked pretty good today. It's easy to throw when Burks has got a 5-yard step on his nearest person. It's easy to throw touchdowns to him. He underthrew an early one. Was it the very first throw?
I think it was the very first throw.
Very first
I think
throw,
he did that in honor of Dylan Gabriel. he didn't want to go out in the very first throw and just throw a strike for an 80-yard touchdown.
What a kind
So he
gentleman.
underthrew it to, I think it was Gibson maybe.
It was.
So that was just an homage, I want to say. But it's hard judging the defense based, like I said, there's 3 starters right there in the defensive backfield that were out. And then they're mixing and matching linebackers. You've got the young kids on the defensive tackle position, Stone and Jackson, kind of mixed with some older guys like Grayson Holden, and so that was good to see. But it's really hard to take away what you think of the team based on all the mixing and matching going on defense to make me feel good about the offense.
I felt pretty good about the offense. I think what you say is absolutely true. It's just the nature of these things. It is always, if somebody does well, somebody on your team is doing poorly. So you're looking for an overall performance that is at least fairly consistent. So I'll bring up 2 things. One is, I felt like, and this is just a vibe, they felt crisp to me. More crisp than I've seen in past years. So more guys looked like they knew that what they were doing in the right position. And there's pluses and minuses everywhere. But overall, it looked to me a more crisp experience of what we're seeing out there on the field, person to person, position to position, second team and first team, more in line what we've seen in past years when we've been really good. I will say another thing, having gone to many spring games over many decades, if this is any indication, again, this is kind of a vibe feel, but when the offense performs well, we usually are a pretty good team because the defense usually always knows what's going on. They're pretty quick to pick up on your offense. It's hard to beat a good defense. If if the defense they're so used to you and your rhythm, they really know your offense. And so they can kind of come up, and you're not going to be exceptionally creative. You're not exactly coming up with play calls that you think are going to catch them off guard. So if you can have success offensively, that's usually a good sign in my experience. And I think we did have offensive success today. For what it's worth, the red team won, the offensive team won. So that's a good takeaway, I think. But more importantly, maybe player to player, position to position, I think we saw some things to take away positives from, and some other things that actually give us some concern about some positions and some players. Some guys that, like you were saying, Jay, may not be with us very much longer.
I think what I found interesting on the offense today was, and I think this was on purpose, not to hide anything, but I do think there will be an emphasis on the tight end position this year, just because of the background of Seth Littrell and Joe John. And today there was basically zero tight end involvement at all in terms of yardage or production or trying to get the tight end open or something. So I honestly think that's a little bit of a ploy by them. Maybe it's a teaching moment.
That might just be wishful thinking, though.
It could be.
It could be they're playing into the weaknesses of the defense for the people that are missing on defense that are all in the deep backfield.
Honestly, it could be the other way, though. It could be maybe the quarterbacks have relied on that too much through practice. So they're like, let's force them to find receivers down the field and not as many maybe open tight ends
what did
or
you
whatever.
think of the play calling on offense? Did you notice a difference between Levy and Littrell? Because I can honestly say I didn't see that big a difference.
No.
I saw too many jet sweeps that went nowhere.
How many? 2?
Oh, no. What'd they run? 5?
Yeah, probably.
I guess I didn't
Probably
notice that.
5. And I don't think any of them worked.
No.
Nothing.
Now, one
worked.
one was a reverse that didn't work, but
Same thing.
Okay.
Jet sweep. That's close to the same thing. You're running laterally. I want to get the ball downfield, not necessarily bombs, but I'd rather a 4-yard wide receiver slip screen than a jet sweep that's going to go nowhere.
Well, to me, I don't know how this works, but in my opinion, I don't think there's as much down and distance thinking as there is, let's see how they handle this. So I don't think there's as much sequencing that goes on in a spring game or practice that would go on in a game experience when they're trying to actually score the football. So I would imagine they're throwing things in that they don't think necessarily will work, but they want to see how these guys react to it. Whereas if you're in a game, you're like, I'm only running this play if I actually think it's going to get production.
I think the most obvious thing of the entire day is there is a wide receiver number 1, target number 1, at least for Jackson Arnold.
Yeah.
There's no question. It is.
Yeah, let's talk about
Deion
Burks.
No question.
Deion Burks.
Yep.
Let's talk about him. So, number 1 among those that were playing, that would be without Andrell Anthony, thank you, and Anderson.
Yep.
So,
And
Farouk. So, where do you think, just make a guess, where do you think Burks ranks when we actually see them line up in August?
Number 1
all day.
Interesting. Okay.
He
even
was-
above Anderson, even above
He's just
Anthony?
a different player.
Interesting.
He's different body style, different speed.
Well, he won one of the Schmitty Awards for most strength improved, and he was only here for 3 weeks.
I mean,
Yeah,
he's where it looked like today in practice in this spring game that he was where Andrew Anthony was after Game 4 last season, where he was clearly wide receiver number 1. He had the moves and the speed. He did everything you wanted him to do. He can blow past people and get open, and he can also do the comebacks. And
He looked better than Angelo Anthony to me.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, and let me say something that may be controversial because there's all kinds of context for it, but Andrell Anthony was playing against lesser competition than what Burks was facing today, even with the guys that are out. So
maybe.
I mean, it was second team, so yeah, maybe. But it's tough to evaluate that. But it's not like we're saying when Anthony was going up against the actual meat of really good defenses. The only time we saw him was in Texas right before he got injured. And so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But Burks is playing against probably pretty comparable talent in terms of the spring game versus what Anthony went up against.
I would like to see Gentry
game.
and I think Gentry and Burks 1v1 would be an absolute show.
And I'm sure there's been plenty of that in practice.
Yeah. Well, have they? Has Gentry been well enough to play in practice?
Some
Against him?
yeah.
I think it's going to be interesting to see if Anthony can come back healthy. If you can get an Anderson, an Andrew Anthony, and a Burks, all three on the field at the same time, and you give Jackson Arnold time, there's no doubt in my mind that at least one
Somebody's
of those,
open.
if not two of those guys, are going to be open.
And what you just mentioned has Farouk on the bench.
And
totally
Gibson
fine
on the
by me.
bench.
And Gibson, yeah.
I think Gibson and Anderson are going to be interchangeable.
Yeah.
Anderson's the better of the two, in my opinion, but playing the same position, I think they're interchangeable.
Well, so, okay.
Is Burks going to be out wide, or is he going to be a more slot guy?
Here's how excited I am about all that. So everything you're saying, plus the fact that these guys get to rotate in and out, plus we're not even talking about Petaway.
Or Brandon Thompson.
And Brandon Thompson.
Yeah.
So we're talking a lot of speed, a lot of depth, a lot of capability. If we're running it right, if we can get protection for our quarterback, and we can get production, which we think we can out of our running backs, which let's transition to that in just a second, then I think we're looking at a receiving core that could just be lethal. They could be very, very dangerous. So let's talk about running backs. So interestingly today, what happened with Barnes? Javonte Barnes, he suited up. He didn't play.
Nope, he didn't play.
What was the quote?
I don't have it on him. It was something along the likes of, he's healthy, but we know what he can do, and we wanted to see the guys that we don't normally see. But I seem to recall Gavin Sawchuk out there running the ball.
And we know what he can do.
And we know what he can do. Hicks was the most positive to me because watching him, I think he's going to be the starter by game 6 or 7, unless they keep Sawchuk as, seniority-wise, he's still a starter.
And you never know what
I don't think it's
number one running back in the country is going to look like.
I don't think it's a Keywan Jones, Adrian Peterson situation where they keep starting Keywan Jones, even though obviously it's Adrian Peterson's the better.
Right.
I don't think it's quite that big of a disparity, but I do think that Hicks brings something to the table that Sawchuk doesn't.
I mean, Barnes did not play enough last year
No.
to warrant skipping
He
this
barely
spring
played
game.
at all.
Yeah. So if you want to read between the lines on that, there's no way it'd be any more shocking than Barnes is in the portal.
Yeah.
So do you think that is...
Or he's still nursing an injury and they're trying to hide it, which I don't know why they would do that.
Yeah.
and I don't think
a
it's
whole
that.
bunch of players
He
sat
was
out for
suited.
injury.
He was suited up
Yeah.
for the bowl game because we saw him on the sidelines and he still didn't play. He went in there for a couple snaps.
So do you think that is Venables trying to encourage a guy to do what's best for him? And I think he'd be honest with him. Or do you think he knows that Barnes is going to enter the portal, so he's not going to waste time and give him playing time in the spring game when you got other guys that could do it, and it's just going through the motions? Maybe he's on the fence. Maybe it's one or the other, and he's like, well, I'm not going to waste time with you and give precious playing time to you versus a guy who's more committed to this program, and you need to make a decision. You've got a spot if you want it. If you don't, here's the door because we could use the scholarship.
I mean, it could be everything you mentioned.
The whole thing's perplexing.
Yeah, it really is. Because the words from spring camp has been he's, looked like he's back to
Well, maybe that's it.
to what he
Maybe
looked like.
Take it for what it's worth. Maybe that's it.
There's still no reason to not play. It's still the only legit, in front of fans, live bullet action that you're going to get.
Yeah.
And you haven't done it in
Since
18
the Florida
months.
State
Yeah,
bowl game.
I mean,
God, it's crazy.
you've got to be able to perform in front of fans.
Well, and don't
with
you, if
real
you're him,
referees.
don't you want that shot to think, if I'm going to get an actual shot at playing and some legitimate PT, I want to have some playing time in the spring game, right?
Everybody who truly is competitive, wants to play,
Yeah.
no matter what, whether there's one fan or 30,000 fans. And so that's interesting.
I feel like it's a writing on the wall.
Yeah, I agree.
Unless, like I said, unless there's some nagging thing, but then he wouldn't have suited up, I don't think.
No.
I just
he
don't
wouldn't.
know. I don't know why you suit him up.
And that's all you would say if you were Venables, right?
Yeah, he got a nagging
You say,
injury.
we know what Barnes is. He's got a little bit of a nagging injury.
No
we hold
reason to put him out there.
That's all I got to say.
So probability he's in the portal in the next 2 weeks, call it.
24 hours.
I mean,
Well, within the next 2 weeks, how probability?
Tomorrow.
I say
I'm not saying the time,
65%.
probability.
I'm saying tomorrow.
65%.
So what is your
100%
probability?
tomorrow.
100% tomorrow. All right, I'll take the
That's
under
a bold
of
prediction.
I'll take the under of 100%. I'm
This time
fine
by
with the
tomorrow,
65.
Barnes is in the portal.
Yeah, I don't
Okay.
know about that.
I don't know. We'll see.
Book it.
That'll be
I hope he's
interesting.
not. I mean,
If he's
Agreed.
yeah, no, we don't want to see
You
him
can-
in the portal.
You can never have, no matter the position, you can never have enough elite athletes
So,
at any position.
outside of
Especially running back.
outside of Sawchuk and Hicks, because Sawchuk looked like normal Sawchuk. He didn't do anything great. He did all right. Hicks, I thought, looked really good. Xavier Robinson looked. He didn't have any big runs. I think he took the last handoff of the game. I don't know, like 8 or 10 yards. But I mean, that's a kid that should still be in high school technically.
Yeah.
He came early from Carl Albert. Body type wise,
He looks big.
he looks big. Me and Jay went and saw them play a high school game, and I mean he's got a great build, height wise. He could probably use another 15 pounds. I don't think that will affect his speed, but it might help him be a little bit more of a bruiser when he needs to be. But man, I thought as a
I thought
high
so
school
too.
kid coming
Yeah.
in here, he looked pretty good.
Oh, I thought so too.
Sam Franklin played a lot today.
Mm-hmm.
He was one of the portal guys. He just looked like
Tennessee Martin,
a guy.
yeah.
I mean, he did
I think that's
okay.
just-
He's a body.
But yeah, to your point, Lucas, I think you start the season running back one with Sawchuk, right, and see if he continues where he left off the last 5-6 games of the year last year. Hicks is a great number 2 coming in, and then you never know what Taylor Tatum's going to look like or be ready for.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the only downside with him being a 2-sport athlete, he's playing baseball right now and not concentrating in the weight room and getting ready to be what you need to be a running back in the SEC. But he's still a 5-star talent, number 1 running back in the country. And some of that's just more talent than everybody else. But some of that could also be just the feel for the game.
Mm-hmm.
He might just know where to run.
That's true.
When to cut, when not to cut, etc. So that could throw a wrench into all the starting position players. But I somewhat agree with you. Hicks, physically and just kind of the way he moved, when you evaluate running backs, you just kind of have to see it. You can't just go off of other stuff. It's just see how they run.
Yeah.
He looks like a dude. And
Well, if I'm going to bright side it, I would say that a guy that's playing baseball right now, the upside to that potentially is that he's not getting the wear and tear, and he's able to take the time off. He's still doing something very physical, and it's
Standing in the outfield? No, just
moving around the outfield. Yeah, he's got an ability to have a good recuperating off season. Whereas then the other bright side, totally in contrast, would be Hicks, who's like working for it, and he wants it, and he's working hard. So both, I'd love to see the guys competing
even to add to that,
with that.
If you're in a position where the number 1 running back in the country, 5-star kid, is your third on the depth chart, that's okay.
That's
I
pretty
can
good.
work with that.
That's pretty good.
I mean, you generally just can't expect anything from an incoming freshman running back because of pass protection. Even if they're the best runner, even if they're Adrian Peterson, he's not a third down. He's not in there for third down pass protection. So with Robinson and Tatum, I don't expect to see either one of them this season outside of maybe clean up in the early games
Or special package,
when you're
because Robinson's a big, powerful dude.
just trying to run the ball, if you've got a 21-point lead and there's 4 minutes to go in the game and you're just going to hand it off 3 times to punt or try to get first downs, obviously. That's where I see either one of those 2 freshmen even stepping on the field.
Well,
And what what does help having two incoming freshmen that look really well, we haven't seen Tatum, but the possibility of both of them looking really good is with the redshirt rule of the 4 games, you could honestly put Robinson out there for the first 2 games or, to do what I was just talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And in the second 2 games, you run Tatum out there to finish it off like that.
Yeah, and then you bank the other 2 to see
Right.
where they could fill in, and depending on injuries.
Depending on injuries, they might just play 2 or 3 games apiece, and then
Yep.
you've got 4 full years left after that.
Yeah, definitely so. And we're kind of burying the lead, but let's talk about quarterback. So Jackson Arnold comes out, and I wouldn't say that he exactly lit anything up, but he had some very good production. He had some very good throws. He had some moments that, at least one throw, the very first throw, that wasn't that great. He had some other times when the defense was really just collapsing. He had several really good runs, tucked the ball away in several positions, and I think he could have. I don't think it would have been much different if he didn't have a blue jersey on. So what are you guys' thoughts on overall what you saw out of Jackson Arnold today?
I think it's more about what he didn't do, honestly.
Interceptions?
Yeah. Or just, he
Forcing the
really
ball.
didn't even throw a single pass that was anywhere near a, quote, bad decision.
Yeah.
And I think we all know the arm strength and the ability is there to hit every throw in the playbook.
Mm-hmm.
And so I circle back to no forced throws. There's probably more sacks than there would have been in real
Sure.
game time or what. But even then, he threw the ball at a lot of feet today when the pressure was there and he knew he had nothing.
Yeah.
He still wasn't just, I've got to get it to somebody. I've got to get rid of it. So the maturity there is nice to see. And
You mentioned maturity. It's interesting. He's a true freshman.
yeah.
He's still a true freshman. People have been talking about him for so long. We act like the guy's got just tons of experience. He barely played in enough games to earn the fact that he's going to be a sophomore next year. But he's very inexperienced, and yet he's showing a lot of maturity. He's showing a lot of poise in the pocket. And we're not giving him a full game plan. It's not like we've game planned against this offense or defense, and we've got a lot of packages for him. We're just kind of running out there and running the different plays in the generic playbook, and it's looking pretty good. So I think that you've got to take a lot of positives away from that.
Yep,
What do you think, Lucas?
I thought he did a good job of not zeroing in on the guy he was throwing to every time.
Yes.
It seemed like he did a better job of maybe looking away, and that was what was helping Burks get open.
Mm-hmm.
Because the safety's not, and without Billy Bowman out there, and if Billy Bowman and Peyton Bowen are both out there, Reggie Powers was out there some, Bogowski was out there a lot. So I think it was easier to manipulate some of those guys with your eyes by looking away, and then
Which is comparable to what he'll face in a lot
you
of
look
defenses.
back and Burks is streaking wide open down the middle. and
Who
it's
was
easy
it?
to
Was
throw
it Burks
to him.
that he caught late in maybe the second half? No, he didn't play the second half. Late in the second quarter, when he looked off the first guy and right down the middle, and it was delivered right on the money, and he walks into the end zone.
Yeah.
That was really good of looking away and either checking down or looking away from his primary route. Again, against an absolute top-notch defense, that is not going to be that wide open most likely. But all that said, we've seen and I know it's different, it's not a real game, whatever, but we've seen so many times in the past, especially with Dylan Gabriel, where that ball, even if it was delivered, would be underthrown, and you're lucky that he's that far open. It was perfect. It was absolutely perfect. He ran under the ball. It was everything you want it to be, even if he was fully covered. So that, to me, was a really impressive throw.
There were some
among
good
others.
comeback routes on the sideline where the receiver would go, 8 yards, come back to 6 yards or so, and he would leave the defender, in the dust essentially, and catch it and then get wrestled out of bounds.
Mm-hmm.
Hawkins did a really good job on those same plays.
Let's
too.
talk about Hawkins. Hawkins was very impressive to me.
Yeah, another kid that should be in high school still.
His first throw, out route, it is one of those where it's, was it for even 10 yards, but it's across the field. he zipped
35-yard
he
throw.
zipped the ball over there. Just
Almost like a 3/4
it was
sidearm.
it was
It wasn't
yeah,
sidearm. It was like a 3/4 throw,
and it was perfect.
and he was laser.
Yeah, it was
Slaying
very
lasers.
very slaying lasers. So basically, we had the best 1 and 2 in the country. He
He looked very
good.
poised.
He looked poised
for a young guy.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see. We bring in a Casey Thompson,
Yeah.
who has a lot of experience.
Well, that was my next question. Where do you think it's going to go? Who's number 2?
Oh man, that's a tough one.
I think it depends
Situation.
where Casey Thompson is in his rehabilitation, obviously,
Right.
and maybe where you're at in the season or who the opponent is. I'm not sure. If it's a Tennessee and it's a tight game, it's probably Casey Thompson.
Like you have to have him in because of injury or something.
Right. Other than that, you might as well just bring the young kid along. Casey Thompson knows his role, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's a mentor. He's someone that you can depend upon if you need him to. But the way that Hawkins has performed, I think you just roll with it.
Well, he's also in
Texas,
right.
Casey Thompson.
experience
The pressure of the
in
game,
a pressure game.
Just you've got to.
Yeah, if it's an injury. Now, if it's a blowout in a game, it's a little different. Now, of course, you've got in Casey Thompson a 15-year senior versus a true freshman who you're probably trying to preserve the redshirt freshman if you can, but I don't know if it's that important. I don't know.
You want the gap between him and Arnold.
Yeah,
You don't want
if
to
you
have him as a
can,
1-year starter.
if
that
you
comes down
can,
to it.
if you can.
Here's
So
the other thing, and is this what you're leading
go,
towards?
yeah,
You don't want to have a quarterback controversy.
right.
I don't think
what
there's
if
a quarterback
Arnold
controversy.
pulls a hamstring and is going to miss 2 games? You decide to go with Hawkins instead of Thompson. Hawkins comes in and just
Lights it up.
lights it.
It doesn't matter. You play who's going to win you the games.
But you may not know. If he pulls a hamstring,
I'm just saying, you don't worry about quarterback controversy.
Well, they didn't do it last year, Jay, because we
Yeah.
know which one of those 2 quarterbacks is better than the other,
and we do, and who would have ended the season just
at
as
least
good?
by talent.
And we didn't see it
When
an
we had
injury.
we had this multiple times with the floor and ceiling discussion, and we all know Jackson Ceiling's floor was a little bit lower than Gabriel's, but his ceiling was definitely higher, and they kept Gabriel the whole time. Now that could be the Levy relationship. They weren't gonna burn Gabriel by putting a true freshman in.
I also think there was extreme pressure to make sure that last season was better than the year before.
I think
had
so.
to be.
I think you're
Yes,
right.
That is true.
And we didn't have an injury. So if Dylan Gabriel, if you rerun the scenario in the counterfactual, and Dylan Gabriel has some kind of an injury
We did
in the
BYU
third or
game.
fourth game, then it would have been an
If
interesting
Gabriel was
situation.
hurt game 4, Jackson Arnold's he's
He'd
your
finish
guy.
the season,
Yeah.
which I don't think would necessarily play out that way if that happens in the coming year. So if you,
It's probably Casey Thompson and not Hawkins, is what you think.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think
And
so.
I think it's Arnold's job when he gets back.
Yes. Now it's one of those
Unless
jobs
it
where
was
it's up for
just-
grabs.
No,
Unless
that's
it
a
was
quarterback
just
battle.
elite, unless the backup was just if Casey Thompson was just playing out of his mind,
Or Hawkins.
then you got a problem.
Or Hawkins. Or they kind of, they kind of both are going in and they're playing so much, and all of a sudden, let's say that it's against, when do we play Temple? First game, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Temple's first.
August 30th on a Friday. We got our own
Yay.
problems with that.
we don't.
So he gets injured. Jackson Arnold gets injured, and all of a sudden we're kind of playing both quarterbacks, and Hawkins is just emerging. And 3 games in, Jackson Arnold's not ready to go yet, and Hawkins is just playing amazing. Then I think you've got yourself a situation where you've got to really make a decision about who you're bringing back and who's going to play, and it's going to be hard to replace a guy who's doing really good. Now, you would obviously look at it and say, well, we haven't played anybody, and here comes Tennessee, and what are we going to do? And so then that might actually, that's a tough situation. You might find out real fast who you do and don't want.
It could be a bedlam deja vu.
Right.
Because remember they put Kendall Thompson in.
That's
He
right.
comes in, throws an interception immediately, and then they bench him, and
Blake Bell.
takes over.
I think the quarterback position is such an interesting role in all of sports.
I mean, it's the
honestly.
biggest ego to deal
Because-
with in sports, honestly.
The deal is,
Oh.
you've
Well,
got
you're not saying you're an egomaniac, but
No.
just confidence.
Well, when you're-
Absolutely.
You
yeah.
can't screw that up. Especially
Absolutely.
with a
But
young kid.
when you're Hawkins, right? You have this. You come in. Everyone wants to think they're the guy. But he knows he's not the guy, right? That's just how college sports work. You have a different kind of monkey on your back, right? You can just let things go because you're still learning, right? You're given a pass for stuff. Oh, I'm still learning. Okay, teach me up, coach. So you can take these other risks. I see Jackson Arnold this year as taking less risks in order to grow. I think you start to understand that
You don't have to fight for it by high
less
risk,
is
low
more,
return. Yes, exactly.
sort of degree, and you've got so much more important things on your shoulders. So I think Hawkins can be dynamic in practice,
Right.
Because his mistakes are swept
Forgivable.
under the rug, right? But Jackson Arnold, as the quote starter, you start making a bunch of mistakes all the time, and then all of a sudden you're under a microscope.
That's a good point.
That other people aren't under. I don't think you can. I think the gap is bigger than maybe even what it looks like in real game time.
I'm sure you're right. That's a great point. That's a great point about the risk return is different for both of them, and a good coach is going to see
It's just like
through
last
that
year, right?
and
How much do we hear
understand
about? I mean, Jackson
Right.
Arnold, right? The backup quarterback, the new young guy. Wow, he's looking great in practice. He's better than we thought
it.
he
He
was
goes
gonna
in
be.
against Tulsa. He looks great.
Right?
Oh,
It's just
yeah.
it's a whole different game when you become the guy. You're the
Right.
starter.
Right. Against Arizona was a case in point.
Yeah.
You know, he was the starter, and his mistakes were not as forgivable, except for the fact that it's an exhibition game, being that bowl games are as they are. But yes, it was like, no, now you're the starter. You can't take those risks because we can't forgive you for them. We need to see production. We need to see dependability.
Yeah, worst case for Hawkins is you go sit down in the film room and the coach is like, why'd you throw this? Why'd you do that? Why'd you do that? That's the worst of it,
Right.
But when you're the starter and you're cost yourself a game, this is a
You're
whole
on
different game.
ESPN throwing a pick six.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Reese Davis is all of a sudden saying, the Sooners were in it until this. Look at this. And they're walking into the end zone. Yeah, that's bad. That's really bad. You know who would have a lot of insight into this? Would be Seth Luttrell. And we've got him here on the podcast. No, we don't, because we don't know if he's ever going to talk to the media. We don't know if...
Brent Venables was asked that question.
he was. It was about both him and Zach.
We would like to talk to Seth Luttrell and Zach Alley. Do
Yeah.
you think we're going to get a chance to do that? And his answer was, quote, maybe.
Which is just
Ridiculous. That's what
yeah.
that is.
What's the
Yeah, I mean, I
Are they still so gun shy because they had the idiot Jeff Levy saying, that's the father of my grandfather of my kids, and standoffish to the media, that now that they just don't want anybody to talk to the media?
it is a weird protectiveness that is concerning, and to be honest, to just kind of call it like it is, these are guys that are in a position where the spotlight is on them, and rightfully so. They paid a lot of money to do a lot of things, and that includes be answerable to what they're doing. And they should have to appear in front of the media. They should have to account for themselves and explain, even if it's just short-lived, even if it's just real truncated, and here's the press conference, and we're going to limit it to this much. They need to be front and center.
Seth Luttrell was a head coach for like 8 seasons or something. He did a
Yeah.
weekly media press conference. He did a post-game press conference.
He knows how to handle this.
He knows what he's doing.
He's not going to say something dumb.
Zach Alley was a defensive coordinator.
And if he's going to say something dumb,
at
let's
a
find
smaller
out.
college, probably had 2 beat reporters, so he
Yeah.
probably has less experience. But from what little bit you have seen before they got hired, when they were, kind of thinking he was going to be the guy, I saw him handle interviews just fine.
It's
I
big,
Press
can't-
conference. It doesn't
it's
make
big
any
time.
sense.
You're paid big boy money. Get out there and talk about
Yeah, I
it.
can't pretend that I pay enough attention to the coordinators at other schools, other blue bloods, to see how much they're talking or not talking. But just the fact that what you mentioned, these are grown men getting paid a lot of money. And whether you like it or not, that's enough reason for them to have to talk.
And honestly, as part of the duty there is you're talking on behalf of your players. I think the players should have some exposure to the media to different degrees. But at the end of the day, it's your job as a coordinator to explain what was going on and not have them have to explain it or have them have to just eat it, because we're all going to make our comments. We're all going to have opinions about it. Counter those opinions and be the one that come to defense of what's going on the field, mistakes that are made, successes that are made. You should both own the mistakes as well as be able to take credit for the
it's almost like you think the
accolades.
criticism's not going to come if there's not an interview
Right. We're going to
the
ignore
coordinator. Everyone's just
Right.
like, oh, well,
It must
we
be
didn't get to talk to
fine.
the coordinator, so we won't,
But
criticize the team.
As much as we want to see them out front doing press conferences or something, there's a highly likely chance that all we're going to get is coach speak, and we're going to see that and be like, that was useless.
That's true.
So that's probably what's going to end up happening.
But sometimes what is said
Lucas,
tells us more. We
they are
read between the
grinding,
lines.
and they don't have time
Yeah.
for press conference.
Yeah, right.
All right?
Well, then they better be really good, right? Then there's no excuse for anything but absolute success.
You're trying to take 20 minutes away from Seth Luttrell and his game plan.
Yeah.
That man does not have 20 minutes to give you.
No.
No, I think it's important. It'd be good to hear from them. It'd be good to hear from their points of view, their theories, their what they're trying to accomplish. And if they need some coaching for coaches to understand how to convey that, that's one thing. I mean, teach them to not throw their players under the bus, because that's a bit of a problem for sure. I just think that it'd be really helpful as a fan, as everyone in the media would like to hear from them, to understand what's going on and what are your thoughts on this, and success, failure, and all the little X's and O's. What happened? Why did it happen? What's your point of view on it? So it'd be interesting to see as the season goes on how that progresses. One thing that if you don't get out in front of the message will be said. And so one of the ways the message is said is by hot mics. And we had a hot mic moment today, didn't we? So we had somebody that kind of gave a quasi-expert opinion.
Somebody knows football.
Somebody that knows football, who said Dusty Dvorak said that, I guess he was caught on a hot mic saying that he didn't think Kanik should play. So let's talk about that a little bit. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think I don't remember the specific play, but
He essentially said he opened up the wrong way, the wrong direction, and allowed a receiver to run by him. And he essentially said, you can't do that. He's like, they can't play Kanik. And well, they said he can't play him after he said Kanik opened the wrong direction, assuming backtracking to cover a receiver, and the receiver went wide open. That's pretty damning.
It is damning.
We sat here, we watched the first game we remember Kanik in was the Nebraska game in Lincoln. Came in and was flying all over the field, nailing people. We were like, man, this guy, him and Stutzman are going to be incredible together. And then last season, by game, 4 or 5, we started to question.
There was questions.
Is he the guy? What do we have behind him? And then they put Kip Lewis out there. They had moved Danny from Mike to Will, right, last season, and then had to move him back because Kip Lewis was his backup essentially, but them playing together was the best solution. And there's still McKenzie, there's Lewis Carter, there's plenty of big linebackers to choose from to stick 2 of them out there, which I still think there should be 3. We all know my feelings on that. But if you've got 2 guys to choose from, Stutzman hands down's the guy. And as Jay talked about when we were walking back, you've got to start Stutzman at his best position. You can't move him to the other spot to cover up something that needs to be fixed.
yeah, if you've got an All-American potential for Stutzman at, the will.
The will, yeah.
But you've got another player that doesn't quite play the mic good enough because he's a will guy, so you put him at mic. Like, you've got to put Stutz where he's the best. You don't want a 94% Stutzman. You want a 100% Stutzman, and you live with whoever the other guy is.
Yep.
Whether it's I mean, maybe McKenzie isn't a better player, but he's got to play because you don't want to move Stutzman.
No, I think you're exactly right. And to me,
Billy Bowman could be the best cheetah on the team,
but
you're not moving Billy Bowman.
Right.
He's got to be where he's at.
Where he's absolutely the best. And that is a pretty good barometer, in my opinion, for how good you are overall as a defense or as a unit. This would be true of the offense as well. So this isn't true, but if you had if you had Kyler Murray, you might say, well, he's the best receiver on the team. And yet you don't play him at receiver because he's actually best at quarterback. And so with Stutzman and with anyone, you look for where can he add the most value for your team. And if you're good enough, and it's where we want to be, you have him at where he's best, and it's best for us. If you're in a beggars can't be choosers environment, which is where we've been in the past years, maybe past decade, you have to just say, gosh, this guy's the athlete, we got to get him on the field, and here's where we need the most help. Now you should be in a position where we want this guy to be where he can excel and be in his true position. Call it here's where he's going to play in the NFL position. Here's where he's going to add the most value to this team, and it happens to correspond with what's best for him. And that would be a good position to have Stutzman in, and I think that's where we need to be now.
It is a crazy hard decision to make and thing to do because Kip Lewis is a ball player. But if Kip Lewis and moving Danny aren't your best combination,
you find the
what
best
do you
combination.
do? I mean,
you find the best combination.
That is tough.
You find the best combination, and you just have to. You get into this is the difficulty of being a coach who is coaching a lot of talent. Is you've got to make tough decisions, and you're going to look over there and see a guy on the bench that's like, my God, this guy is all-American talent, and he's on my bench because I've got everybody else.
There's another
here.
Position like that, I think.
Offensive line.
Oh no, I was thinking,
offensive line. Beanbo's been doing that for almost a decade now.
Just putting the best five.
Yeah,
put the best five
out there. When Tyler Guyton, let's say, is a great right tackle, but you've got a guy that really can't play right guard, so you have to move him in so you can play the other guy right tackle.
And that's not good.
And I mean, sometimes you just have to deal with growing pains to accomplish what you need to. But
I want us to be past.
You want to be best
pains.
at the position to me.
So where's your other position?
Safety.
Yes.
Safety. There are 3 guys for 2 spots, and there's 3 legit ballers.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Billy Bowman's got his spot, but Robert Spears-Jennings is a fantastic player, and then you've got Peyton Bowen, who
playmaker.
I don't know. I don't know how you keep him off the field.
He played well today too,
because he's also got maybe more upside than either 2 of those guys.
Yeah.
You don't want to lose him.
No.
I don't think I'm not saying he's some sort of, shocking portal entry guy.
Right.
It's just, what do you do when you have 3 starters?
You got to manage
at 2
that.
positions.
And you look at the great teams in the past recently. You look at the problems that the great problems to have Nick Saban had and others, Georgia's had, Dabo Swinney at Clemson has had, where you have all this talent and you're just trying to make guys happy enough to stick around because what's best for the team is not necessarily what's best for them. Obviously, what's best for them is to play as much as they possibly can. But you look for ways to get them involved in ways that help your team win. And you might end up telling them one thing and doing another, and you feel your way through, and you never know. You never know who's going to get injured. You never know who's going to rise to the occasion in a different position. But you have to play guys. You want to be in a position where you're playing guys where it's going to put your team in the best position to win, and you want that to align with that's their best position to be in. And we want to get those guys on the field. It's kind of like in basketball is a really good one to see, I think, analogy-wise, when you've got lots of talent and you say there's only one ball and you got to figure out where it goes. You've got a lot of shooters, and who's going to be the guy? You look at a team that really failed with this, and I would say that was the Oklahoma City Thunder back a decade ago when they've got Harden on the bench as a 6. And you end up losing him, and you mess that whole thing up, not realizing that he probably should be starting and have a key role there. And you look at the Warriors and what they did when they were just completely dominant. They had tremendous shooters, tremendous guys with the ball, and they found a way to make it work. So a great coach finds a way to make that work with those different elements. And you could say, yeah, if it was just you on this team, you'd lead the NBA in scoring, and you'd be unbelievable, and you'd set all kinds of records, but we're going to win championships by you playing a role and everybody else contributing to that role, and we're going to spread the ball around and make it work.
I think Brett wants to get to the culture of the Saban and the Kirby Smart, where you've got guys stacked up on top of each other that when you wait your turn, and when it's your turn, you get a year, maybe 2, to come in after
And
the
that's
guy
all
that
it
was
takes.
All-American. The problem is that was a realistic thing up until
Yeah, you got
NIL.
a new not
I think once
NIL and
transfer
portal.
yeah.
Yeah.
Once
Yeah.
that became what it is today, I don't think any coach is going to be able to pull that off.
Yeah, I mean, if
That's
Peyton,
why
it's
Saban
tough.
retired.
If
because
Peyton's
of
Bowen-
Tough. I
situations
think it
like
can be
this.
pulled off, but it's tough.
if they sit down tomorrow with Bowen, right, and he's a firm number 3, let's say, in the safety rotation,
Ooh.
there's $1 million paycheck waiting for him, where someone like an Oregon's going to be like, bro, they're sitting you at your third?
But if you've got it right, if you're
That
Oklahoma,
fax didn't go through, and now you're at OU. Well, here's Phil Knight, $500,000, come play for us.
But if you're Oklahoma, where we now know that we are a top program in NIL, like many of the other tops, you can make that work because you say, listen, you're going to be in the rotation, you're going to have an NFL spot, and you're getting a paycheck as you're sitting here. That's where we can, if we play it right, we can make that work. If you are a TCU, you can't make that work because it's odd for them to have 3 in a position because there's no way they're going to keep 3 in a position because they're not going to have the money and they're not going to have you're going to get to the NFL. We're going to find the rotation that gets all 3 of these guys into the NFL. We can do that. We should be doing that, I should say. Like that's the benchmark. If you want to be the Alabamas of the world, of what we've seen in the past, you want to be the Georgia, then you've got to make that work. That's the tough job that Brent Venables faces that a guy at a lot of these other programs don't face because they don't have the nice problem it is to have of so many people with talent that you've got to find a way to keep them happy. NIL money plus playing time plus getting them in a position where they're actually going to get drafted.
At that position specifically, RSJ is a junior. Billy Bowman is a senior. This is his final year. He could have gone to the NFL. Him and Stutzman decided to come back. So you tell Peyton Bowen, we're using you when we can. He got plenty of playing time. He didn't get as much. We wanted to see him out there as opposed to who's the Texas Tech kid, Reggie
Pearson.
Reggie Pearson.
We would have rather seen Peyton Bowen out there. Obviously, he was a true freshman. Defense is complicated. It's a little harder. Now he's got the other year in there. RSJ's been in it the whole time. So now it's, let's say, RSJ and Billy Bowman are the 2 starters. But Peyton Bowen cycles in there pretty significantly throughout the season. But next year, it's his job.
Yeah.
He takes Bowman's spot. And then next year, you've got RSJ and Peyton Bowen back there.
I also think you have to explain to all 3, even Billy Bowman's, that having 3 of you for 2 positions is beneficial for all 3.
For all of you, yes.
Right? You can't play every snap. You need a break. You need someone else that can come in and there's not a drop-off on this team. It benefits not just the team, but all of you collectively as a position to have a third person.
I think you're totally right.
I'm going to guess that Billy Bowman's not the kind of guy that's, sure, coach, you take me out for 15 plays a game, that's fine.
Yeah.
Hopefully he's okay with that, and it's enough to appease. If you can take, if Peyton Bowen can take 15 snaps from Billy and 15 snaps from RSJ, 30 snaps a game, that's a lot of playing time.
Right.
That should be enough to suffice all 3.
And as we talk about this, yesterday we find out Justin Harrington's going to the portal.
Right.
He's in the same situation. as we're talking about Peyton Bowen.
Yeah.
Because he's going to be in the third rotation at Cheetah.
At best.
We thought he was going to take the starting job.
Yeah, because he had it last year.
Yeah, he had it last year on some rushing downs. You would see McCullough out there. On the passing, it was definitely Harrington because he was the better of the two coverage. What game did he get hurt in?
It was
Like
second
third
third.
game.
Yeah.
But so we see him coming back from injury, thinking, oh, he's gonna solidify that starting spot again. McCullough's gonna be in the rotation. Who else is gonna be in the rotation for
Dolby's probably the
Kendall
starter.
Dolby? So it looks like they couldn't convince him that he was going to see enough playing time.
Which he's out of time. Like this
Yeah,
is his last year.
last
Yeah.
year.
It-
So he's making the decision to go on the portal. Is there a chance that he doesn't find somewhere to go?
Oh,
and
definitely.
comes back?
Definitely.
I don't know.
There's a chance.
He's coming off an injury. I don't know how many high-profile teams would have.
He's got to be
hole,
careful.
but he's also only fits certain defenses,
Right.
Too, because
Right.
he can play safety.
He's
he can play
long and
strong
lanky,
safety at
yeah.
some schools, but he's not a free safety and he's
Right.
not a corner.
Right.
And maybe he can transition to like a third linebacker in a 4-3. That might be a really good position, honestly,
Mm-hmm.
for him because that's essentially like the cheetah, but maybe with a little bit less coverage. So it's
Well,
knows?
that's where I think you're in a position where you want to be real upfront and honest with a kid and tell him where you think you can use him and how you can use, and you hope he has good advisors who are looking out for his true long-term best interest to say, look, here is where you can have your best experience, maybe getting to the next level, and all things considered, and all of it's in the mix. Like, all right, here's your NIL money here. Here's your NIL money there. Here's your pro prospects here and there. Here's your starting position here and there. What do you want as for your future? Do
And
you
for
want to
Peyton-
say you were a guy who played all games and you were a starter and you played almost every down and you may or may not have gotten to the pros and your NIL money was low? Or do you want good NIL money and you're part of a team that's competing for championships and you maybe battled it out and maybe or maybe didn't get to the NFL? It's a tricky situation for both, but I think you want to be honest with the kid and you want to hope that kid's getting good information and advice from people who have his long-term best interest at heart. There's plenty of programs who are going to come in and tell you that you're going to be the guy, and you show up on campus, and even if you're the guy, you're like, wow, I'm the guy. Yeah, I've got lots of tape, and a lot of my tape isn't that great because I'm surrounded with 10 other guys who don't know what they're doing. And I don't look that good because they don't look that good. And all of a sudden, I'm a guy who had the talent to make it to the next level, and I didn't because no one else was able to help me. You know, it's a fickle thing to get drafted. It's a fickle thing to make a team. And a lot of it comes down to, were you able to be a part of something that had a surrounding cast that gave you the best light to shine in?
Yeah, Billy Bowman's probably a second-round draft pick if he has just the type of season we're going to have. Maybe a first-round draft pick if he's like a Thorpe Award winner. And then Peyton Bowen can slide right in and only have to play one meaningful season of football, and he'll be right where Billy Bowman was.
Right.
If you can pick up and do what the guy ahead of you just did
Yeah.
at the same level, then you're also going late first round, second round, and you've got to be able to convince
Which has
kids
got to be your
see that.
dream, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's the
ultimately-
realistic
that's-
dream.
Yeah.
That, like, if you were thinking you were going to be the third pick announced, then all right, you've got crazy expectations that are going to be real hard to hit no matter what happens.
Yeah, and sometimes that's just the luck or unluck of where you came in and who was ahead of you when you chose that school. Because like a Billy Bowman, he comes in where he's the best safety prospect we've had in years, right? So he gets a lot of playing time as a freshman. Actually, we had to move him all over the field because we had so many problems.
I got hurt on a kickoff, if I recall correctly.
And-
was it a kickoff?
A punt return?
So he comes in, and then last year gets to play true safety. Was he 6 picks? A couple of pick sixes? At least three?
Three pick sixes.
Yeah.
Including one
And,
that was critical against
no,
BYU.
it's his job. Now,
Yeah.
Peyton Bowen comes in where you are going to a team that happens to have that guy already, so you're going to have to wait. So if Peyton Bowen wants to be a all-time tackling leader at OU or all-time interception guy, not going to happen.
Right.
But you can parlay all of your talent sitting behind a Billy Bowman and turn one true season of a starting safety role into securing financial freedom for generations
And all your
of your family.
dreams of playing on Sunday and all that stuff.
I mean, on a different level, that's what Kyler Murray did.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely
Yeah.
true. He is.
I'm sure he's sitting
That's
at
a
home
great
and
example.
he gets the call. Baker got that extra year, and he's like, "Son of a gun! I was planning on starting this year."
And little did we know
yeah,
how fine we would have been.
yeah. If Baker would have not got that year, and Kyler would have had 2 years at quarterback,
Oh, my
it would have
God.
been a problem.
The
Oh my
second
God.
year would have been.
Yeah, I don't know how it could have been.
I don't either,
than
but
the one he
it
had.
would have been. It would have been.
I don't see how it could have been, but
But it could have been.
so I mean, it's not like you can say, "Hey, you're behind the number one draft pick, and then the next year you're going to have a great season, be number one draft pick."
Yeah.
You're not talking about that as safety, but second round's very
Yeah.
feasible, and that's something to look forward
That's
to.
the same thing.
and be satisfied with.
For your position.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's,
Yes.
I mean,
for your position.
For your position, if you're talking about being a first-round safety, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Number one overall, but
No, Kyler's a great example, and I'm sitting there during the game today, and they're rolling through on the right side of the scoreboard all of the leaders. The single season most interceptions, season most interceptions, career most interceptions, which is Darryl Royal. Very interestingly, so you look at that. That's a guy who played in the 1950s, early 50s, and
They didn't throw the ball much that back
and they
then.
didn't throw the ball that much back then. And so you're like, if you want to achieve this strange benchmark of having yourself at the top of this list, which is going to be hard to do at Oklahoma in any position, then yeah, okay, son, you're going to have a hard time getting there. Don't make that what you're trying to achieve. Make what you're trying to achieve to be the kind of guy that people remember because of how great you are and are surprised that you're not higher in those lists. But you were a tremendous contributor to a winning team, and you got yourself on the platform that you could then get to the NFL.
yeah, because even if Kyler Murray had not won the Heisman, he would be remembered as one of the best quarterbacks to ever play at the University of Oklahoma.
Yeah, despite the fact that he is not in the record books
Nowhere near
at the top of any of them.
anything.
Yeah.
He's probably 80th or something on, yardage or something. I mean, there's
Yeah, career-wise, he's nothing.
yeah,
I mean, he's probably like
Single season, he's up there.
single season, yeah, but I mean career passing yards
career
or something
nothing. Yeah.
over the
I
last
mean, everybody's looking at
30 years.
Landry Jones. I don't know what you
Right.
guys are talking about. Every quarterback coming in here wants to be Landry Jones.
Yeah, do you want to be Landry Jones?
No, you don't.
Or do you
though.
want to be
But you shouldn't because you don't want to be here 4 years.
Right.
You want to be here 3 years in the NFL, and the same for all these other positions.
That'd be a great pitch. I wonder if they use that pitch.
Yeah, that'd be pretty good. Yeah, I mean,
I don't want to see your picture 20 years from now.
yeah, because
on
I want you in the
the
NFL.
scoreboard. I want you to be
Yeah,
remembered.
maybe
with a statue.
maybe a single season.
Yeah.
yeah.
I want you
Trust
to
me,
have a
we'll give you a statue. Yeah.
And I want you remembered for your career earnings and representing the university. I don't want you to have some career benchmark.
Right. Because that means you were just good enough.
Yeah.
And we weren't that good. But we want to be so good that we just can't keep guys 4 years because they're all off to the NFL. That's what you want. That's the position you want to be in. And that's a great transition into something you alluded to earlier, Jay. Kind of conclude with this unless there's other thoughts. So right now we have something like 92 guys on scholarship.
Mm-hmm.
Last time I looked at the rules, you can only have 85 guys on scholarship. So that means we have got to shed 7 guys or so. And there's some guys in the portal we want. So that means we've got to have some horse trading going on. What do you think that looks like?
I mean, at worst, you're hoping to get one of the defensive tackles to commit just to add depth because they want a 6-man rotation going into the SEC. And right now we've got 5 probably that you're super comfortable with.
Yeah.
Um,
And that's in a defense that I think is going to be really, really good.
Yeah, and this is
that's
to
the
just
one weak
really,
area.
really prop up the defense.
Oh,
I
my
mean,
gosh.
if you get the kid from TCU who was a freshman All-American and a first-team All-Big 12 his second season, I mean, you are really talking about one player, not individually himself, but just adding to the collective whole of a team of really, really being a dominant defense.
I mean, if you can get that defensive line to swallow up the offensive line or hold them back
If
long
you're
enough
full-
that you can fire off your linebackers to either go after the quarterback or stuff the run.
Right.
Or don't
It
have
all
to fire
starts
off your line.
Right.
It all starts there.
If you're playing, I mean, they're going to play a 3-3-5 type of situation. So you want that defensive line to be absolutely dominant. And you don't have to be a Tommy Harris, but if you can be the type of contributor that is somewhere close to that as an absolute complement to everything else that's out there on the field, my goodness, this defense could just be tremendous. And to me, the selling point for a guy like that would be, this is an easy decision, man. Look at this. Look at where you plug in and what we could be. And yes, the fans aren't going to see it because the true fan, well, the typical fan didn't see Tommy Harris for what he was because he got double teamed every time. But the true coach, the true deep thinking fan,
The end zone expert.
and the end zone analyst, as well as the NFL scouts, they see that guy and they go, yeah, I understand why this defense is dominant. It's because this guy, who kind of never gets his name announced, is absolutely eating the offensive line up. And
Yeah.
he could be a guy that plugs
If
in there.
you never hear about a defensive tackle or a corner, fantastic. They are absolutely playing their butts off.
Yep.
Because if a D tackle is doing what he's supposed to do, then the defensive ends are getting all the praise. And if the D line's doing what it's supposed to do, and your corner is so locked down that your whole offensive game plan was like, well, we should probably stay away from his side of the field, you're good to go.
Yeah, the naive fan is the guy who doesn't understand why the guy who never got the interceptions is the guy that goes first in the draft. Is because he was always locking up the number one receiver and was taking them out of the game.
Yeah. The lack of attempts
Yeah,
on his side,
exactly.
the numbers game just didn't work out for
You
him.
only had 4 pass breakups and 1 interception.
Yeah,
this season,
yeah.
And you played every single game.
How is he going second round in the draft?
Yeah.
And yeah.
And then we have, I didn't notice it much today on the snaps because Bates at center had been a little bit wishy-wash on his snaps. The word was. And with Everett going down and not knowing his return, that puts a lot of pressure on the young guy to step in and know the calls and get everyone in the right blocking schemes and patterns and get the ball to the quarterback, which the centers have to do. I think he played well today.
Seemed to, yeah.
I still think there's a SMU kid who's got 35 career starts, 33 career starts. It's hard to say no to someone like that if they're wanting to come here, that's got that experience, that knows, has seen it all, has blocked everything. And it doesn't mean that he's a starter, but usually when a guy has 1 year left and he's hitting the portal, it's to play.
Yeah.
And,
I mean, it
and
could
even
be.
truly, if you ask Bates, everybody wants to play, but he's thrust into it. I don't think, the wiser people in the room would easily be able to tell him, don't worry about it. It's a 1 year rental. Learn, grow, pick his brain. It's your job.
I mean, working with Walter Rouse last season.
Yeah.
He came in and was great at left tackle. I mean,
So,
Yeah, and I think you're talking about a position where that's exactly what's in play. So if you look at a guy in contrast to that would be like General Booty today, who, he looked great against whatever that was, the second, third, fourth team defense. He had a really good run for a touchdown. He had a pass for a touchdown. He had a lot of things. All that he is doing is he's a guy out there who has got some talent, who is filling out a practice squad and being a contributor. And he's part of the lineup doing all of that. This is talking about something completely different. This is a guy who is going to plug into a position where if he's not getting the starting job, it's because the guy earned the starting job over him. And he is right there in line when that injury happens to step up and be the guy. And that's a really good position to be in. Again, we hope that they are out there able to get these guys. That they've got their feelers out there, whatever it is, to engage them and say, look, this is a position where we're interested in you for all the right reasons. We don't want you just to fill out a scholarship because, quite frankly, we've got enough of those to go. We only want you if we're taking someone out of the lineup. And so you're a replacement that's going to play.
Yeah, I think, hopefully we can do that. And as you mentioned with the numbers, we're going to see a lot of really talented players where in years past we would be freaking out that they've hit the portal.
Yes.
I mean, we're going to be losing 4-star players that were maybe top 100, top 150 in the country that are going elsewhere. And they're only doing that because they've been beaten out.
Well, I'd like to see, it'd be very interesting to have an engaged fan from a place like Alabama who could sit here and tell us, how did you feel when Mr. XYZ hit the portal on you? And did you take it in stride knowing, okay, we had to give up a position because we had somebody else coming in, and that's where you really want to be versus where you're gonna see OU Twitter lose their minds when certain players hit the portal. Oh my God, all is lost. What's happening? We're losing this guy, and I've been following this guy since high school, and he's the guy. If we lose him, we can't be any good. Like, no, that's not the position we're in anymore. We're in a position where beggars can be, we're not beggars. We can be choosers. We get to select who we want in different positions and start to build a lineup that is filled with guys who actually can contribute. Sometimes 4- and 5-star guys don't pan out. And we weren't in the luxury of having that to choose from before. Today we are, both on offense and defense, to be quite frank.
Yeah, I mean, we have to lose 7 to 10 guys in the portal.
It has to happen.
It has to.
Yeah, mathematically it has to happen.
The only way it doesn't is if you can talk this SMU kid into being a walk-on with an NIL deal. Or, that's
I
the
guess
only
there's
thing
that.
you
I
can
guess
build
there's that,
around
yeah.
is like, hey, we don't have
You're not a
people
scholarship
to leave.
guy.
You're here. You're a starter. We're going to pay you X amount of NIL. Who cares? You have to pay your,
right.
whatever, schooling out of it or whatever.
Yeah.
You're not on, quote, scholarship.
Right.
So there's ways around that.
Yeah.
And so maybe we lose 5 that way instead of 10.
Maybe so. And I would, if I'm that kid, I'm taking that bargain and say, oh, so here's the money in my pocket, net of okay, I'll take that. Yeah, all day long. So that may happen as well. Well, it's a good position to be in. I think we're in pretty good shape. We've got some rebuilding or some strengthening to do, if you will. I take away from the spring that we are stronger than we've been in years. I mean, I'm pretty positive that we're stronger than we've been in quite a few years, maybe all the way back to 17. We talked about, and maybe in a future pod we'll break down how many guys in those past years when we were a playoff team would actually make this squad.
Yeah, that would be a lot of fun.
To see who would be actually on there.
We'll put a playoff roster up against today's starting roster and see who we think would
actually make it at the time.
And we'll also probably go into the new 2-minute rule and in-helmet communication.
In-helmet communication. 2 things that we've talked about, at least one thing that we've talked about. Do we ever talk about the 2-minute rule? That's always been something I've wanted. I don't know if we ever talked about it. I watch NFL and I think that is nice. That is
let's get another commercial.
A feature. Yeah. Because I want to extend the game. No, I like the fact that there's a break like that you can play towards, and it adds an element of strategy. I really like the idea of let's just get use of technology and let's talk to players and tell them what's going on. Let's get out of the antiquated world of Michigan intercepting our signals and whatever the hell's going on, and let's be able to just communicate to what's going on. One thing that we'll talk about is, does that lead to more huddling, or at least soft huddling? Because that's what they do in the NFL.
We did that today.
Yeah, and it's just a way to communicate. The quarterback's getting all the calls, and he just tells you what to do and break. Here we go. And you get to the line. It's not exactly a hurry up, but it's not the old huddling of the past. So I think all that is a step towards the future that's going to be pretty interesting. We'll cover that. We'll have some other off-season topics and some off-season guests to cover. Anything else to cover before we sign off?
Nope.
All right. Well, this has been a good spring. We'll have some off-season stuff to talk about, and then we'll be back before you know it with before we know it, it's going to be season time, boys, and we're going to be talking about fall practice and everything. Tobacco Exchange is our sponsor. We thank them. We want you guys to go out there and visit them. They got 3 great locations throughout the metro. Tell them that we sent you there. They're going to give you a great deal and some great selections on cigars. Until then, Boomer,
Sooner.